Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
We're back.
We are back, and we're looking at a painting that is representing Buddha there. You see the golden, almost looks like a golden UFO over his head. He's emanating beautiful, brilliant light, and we see all these beings all around him in this sea of consciousness.
Yes, and they all look like they're trying to cause some sort of chaos or another.
Trying to distract him is what they are trying to do. So this is right before he achieved enlightenment, nirvana, moksha, understanding of the oneness of all and understanding of the cosmic mind. Interesting because, he went through a period of fasting. I mean, severe fasting. He was living out there with ascetics, which are basically holy men that usually wandered about pretty darn naked. If they had a loincloth, that was a lot. And they did not really shelter themselves. They let themselves be out there in the weather. They only ate what people handed to them, and that was it. They lived a severe life of austerity. And when Buddha left his kingship, to be, as his father was the king of a very wealthy but small kingdom, he was the prince, and he lived a pampered life. But then he discovered suffering, as his father had tried to hide suffering from him. And he grew up thinking the world was perfect and blissful, and nobody ever aged or died or anything like that. And then it hit him smack on. So right before achieving enlightenment, he went and basically just decided, I'm gonna, just plant my butt right here by the Bodhi tree, and I'm just going to meditate until I die or achieve enlightenment, one or the other.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so right before he achieved enlightenment, he was visited by Mara. And Mara, you could view Mara as being the tempter, for sure the tempter. You could view him in a Christian sense and kind of think of him as a devil or a Satan, an adversary.
Well, I always say new level, new devil, and it seems like right before somebody's about to go up higher in life, things really start to surround them and try to hold them down.
Yes, new temptations will arise. So, Mara tempted Buddha with beautiful dancers, trying to tempt him in that way, trying to scare him, trying to, tempt him in every way, trying to say, hey, you know what? You could go back home and you could be the most benevolent king out there, and you could do wondrous things for the people of your kingdom. All these other rationalizations for why you should give up and not keep pursuing this spiritual path that you're on. Just give up, go home, be with your wife and child, because he had a wife and child. And see your family, they love you. Become the king that you could be, as well as all these other temptations. And what's interesting is even Buddha's own father, even though Buddha was married, could see there was something stirring in him, and there was a discontent right before he left. And so even his own father, Siddhartha's own father, was trying to tempt him with dancing girls right before he left home. And here we can see depictions of Rakshasas, or like basically devils and demons here, all breathing down on his neck, trying to tempt him, trying to distract him. Isn't it interesting, after a period of prolonged fasting and deep meditation, this being, this Mara, this demon, this devil, this Satan, this tempter, comes to tempt Buddha.
Right. It's very curious.
Isn't it? It is. And so, one of the disciples of Buddha was Ananda, and Ananda means bliss. Ananda saw Mara approaching. He felt very uncomfortable. Why should Mara come at this time? But Mara saw him already. Ananda could not hide himself. He had to stand there and wait for Mara. And they had to say things like, hello, how are you do? Just, what are you going to say to the devil when he comes trying to tempt you?
Well, small talk doesn't go well, I don't think.
No. And so obviously, this is a reference to the inner struggle that goes on within all of us. And, by the way, Buddha was born over 500 years BC. So, Buddha definitely predates Christ. as far as we see. And I'm going to give you all the links so you could go into this. And this particular is a PDF? No. But anyway, it gets into Buddha's encounters with Mara, the tempter. So every culture has its quote-unquote Satan. And, really what it's talking about is the struggle within the mind. It's the struggle within the mind and the heart. The temptation for us to sometimes take the easy road, the easy way out, to succumb to the pleasures of the world, to rationalize things. How many of us have never rationalized anything?
Right, and they sure make it easy to do that these days.
Yeah, honestly, we were doing a hike, and we had a window of about 4 hours between people that we were seeing today. And so, I kind of rationalized not going to the top of the mountain and seeing what's going to be around the corner, right? Because we did go pretty far. We still did about 4 miles of hiking. And a lot of it was pretty much straight up rocks. So it was pretty challenging. We got a good workout in. And, kind of used the rationalization there. Well, we have somebody coming up. I don't know what time it is exactly because my phone just died. I guess it's okay. And Cindy was like, yeah, I'm ready.
I totally took that rationalization.
She started to put it out there a little bit ahead of me, saying, if you're ready to turn around, I'm ready to turn around.
Yes, I did.
We all rationalize things. And sometimes, we might rationalize something that's perfectly fine too, and other things could be perhaps letting ourselves down in some ways. And so here we see what the Buddhist Mara demon teaches us about life and attachments, because it's also about being attached to things, attached to outcomes, attached to, often physical pleasure, wonderful food, all these different things, when perhaps we could be doing a little bit more in the world and helping others. Now, interesting also, the earliest Buddhist texts that we have, they date between the 1st century BC, before Christ, to the 3rd century CE. And so it's interesting to see this story because there's obvious parallels, totally obvious parallels. Now, the oldest texts that we have of a gospel are between 150 and 250 AD, not BC. And, of course, we are all familiar with the story of Christ being tempted. After fasting for 40 days, remember, Buddha, prolonged fasting period out there, deep meditation, contemplation. Christ out there, deep meditation, contemplation, prayer, fasting, both of them, and then the temptation by the devil. Again, it's obvious parallel. You can't deny the parallels there.
No, and you can't even notice in your own life when I say new level, new devil, just notice when you're fixing to go up a notch, you'll see these things come and tempt you.
Exactly, and we're all faced with temptation. Christ could have done it in a different way, and maybe things would have been very, very different. Maybe he would have been able to establish temples and churches, that would rival the glory of Rome. But obviously, he had no interest in that. No interest in these worldly riches. But again, was his temptation by this one particular person that flew up with his wings on the rock, or was the temptation something that's going on in his own heart and mind?
We're not sure these days because there was a lot of entities around back then that they didn't really hide. But personally, with me, it's all in my heart and mind.
Ultimately, it is. And yes, there are dark entities out there that are trying to get us to stop doing things that lead to the highest path for us, in which we can help the most people. And, that is real. As you see, Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterwards he was hungry. Now the tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread." But he answered and said, "It's written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." And then the devil took him up to the holy city, set him on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it's written, he shall give his angels charge over you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus said to him, It's written again, you shall not tempt the Lord your God. Again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory, and he said to him, All these things I will give to you if you will but fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, Away with you, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve. And the devil left him, and behold, the angels came and ministered to him. So again, very, very interesting, comparison with the Buddhist text, which is actually older than this. But again, it's about working with the inner demons as well as the outer, because there are nasty things out there, for sure. We've talked about all sorts of beings out there. There are shadow beings, there are ghosts, there are, definitely discarnate spirits. We see them every day, pretty much. There are little gray aliens out there, as well as reptilians and Draco, and you name it, it's out there. There's all different types of beings. But it's also all about the inner battle going on within us. Are we going to live up to our highest possibility? And many are familiar with the Transfiguration of Christ. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him, led them up to a high mountain where they were all alone, and there he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before him Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. He did not know what to say. They were frightened. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and enveloped him, and a voice came from the cloud, This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him. And suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the sun had risen from the dead. And then we see Krishna and Christ. Basically Krishna and Christ, it becomes obvious when you study both that there are definite similarities. There's a lot of very, very different cultural things going on in their lives as well. But what's interesting too is the transfiguration, because Krishna has a transfiguration as well as did Christ. And Krishna, when he has his transfiguration, Arjuna, who is with him, his disciple basically, is blown away, because the brilliance, the brilliant white light, the emanation of the glory scares him. He's just scared. He's almost terrified. He can't even behold it. It's just so brilliant.
Right. A lot of things, it's just hard to say exactly what went on, but, as we move forward in this life, we're learning more and more and more.
So Krishna was born 18th of July, 3228 BC, 3,228 years before Christ. And Krishna went to Vaikuntha the 18th of February, 3102 BC, 3,102 years before Christ, which was the start of the Kali Yuga. So according to the timelines, he lived on Earth for 126 years and 5 months, which is interesting, before he went to Vaikuntha, because his kingdom was not from here.
Interesting.
Yes. So there again, transfigurations. I mean, there's so many similarities. And again, the Buddha predates Christ, and the same thing with Krishna. They both predate the Christ, parables, stories, legends, everything that happened. So what we're looking at here is obvious. There's similarities, and they're telling us universal truths, because there's so much that lies dormant in each and every person. And again, Christ said, "Greater things you will do." How could that be? When he declared, "I and the Father are one," unless we are also one, with the Father, the Mother.
Exactly.
And that's the ultimate truth, the oneness of all. And we were doing a video out there on our hike, and it's only 60 degrees out, and yet and I have plenty of battery, and yet the phone shut off for overheating halfway through. But I think we will upload it anyway and do a part 2.
Yeah, because the topic was pretty interesting considering the phone just died.
Exactly. So again, we are to look deeper, and we should not be divided, because this age has been all about division by dogma, divisions by politics, and ruling by controlling the greed, and with that lies within us, controlling us by fear, by greed, by desire, by lust. So if we are to overcome our temptation, just as Buddha did with Mara, and just as Christ did with Satan, then we must get past the division. We must get past thinking that, well, only our dogma is right, because as you could see, there are universal truths here, and this is the more important thing, is understanding the universal truths, and not embracing one dogma over another. It's more about the love, the compassion, sowing the seeds of compassion and love within our own hearts, and just basically spreading it.
Very, very important.
So thank you guys for joining us. As always, thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.